Bear with me as I explain the theory behind what's going on with this, what may or may not be happening. So in the gecko community, it's something that is pretty commonly done, that throughout incubation, they'll keep the temps steady throughout incubation. And in the last week or so, when color development is typically happening, they'll bump up the temperatures a couple degrees, and you can see a very drastic color change between the animals who have had that temperature increase versus ones that you just let incubate throughout the entire incubation at a constant temperature. So this hasn't really been done very much with snakes that anyone has spoken about or documented. So I decided to try this with some Borneo short-tailed pythons, which may or may not be great because Borneos have such a high amount of variability as it is. But I did this as an experiment. I'm also trying it with blood pythons and with Irian Jaya carpet pythons or West Papuan carpet pythons. So those clutches are due to hatch in about 2 weeks. They just got separated. So what I did is I took half of this clutch and I incubated them, or the whole clutch was incubated all together for the majority of the incubation process at about 86 degrees with, some variation, warm days, etc. And then for the last 2 weeks, I took this experimental group right here and I put them into a warmer incubator from 86 up to about 89 degrees. There was one day where the control group did get kind of warmer than I would have liked to have had them, but generally this group stayed warmer for the last 2 weeks. This group stayed cooler for the last 2 weeks of incubation. So I want to take a look at what technically would be considered like the quote-unquote control group. So these are animals that were incubated at the lower, cooler temperature. These are the boys that hatched out of that clutch, and really nice. This was actually from a granite striped Het Ultra, bred to a marble, the same marble that was the dad of the other marble clutch that I've got. And the majority of the offspring do have speckled sides, but I don't know that anyone has been doing any marble to granite pairings as of the last several years. So this was kind of an experiment to see what sort of thing might go on. So decent color, speckling on the sides, pretty cool. So those are the boys that hatched out of this clutch. So I'm going to put that back. Now we'll take a look at the girls. This is also cooler temp. So decent contrast. They've got this kind of darker color towards the tail end. The majority of them do have speckling on the sides in one way or another. This one has kind of muted speckling, so not as much as I would have expected. Just like this one right here has got a little bit, but not as much as I kind of would have expected from two animals that have speckling on their sides that are pretty much like this. So decent look, some really interesting stuff going on here, some nice granite speckling in there. So these are the girls from the quote-unquote control group right there. So let me just make sure I'm not pinching anybody. Okay, so these are the girls from the temps that I bumped up for the last end of the incubation, and I'm seeing a lot more contrast. Well, I think I'm seeing a lot more contrast in here and a little bit more development of the light colors, like the white on them, compared to the other group. But same thing, speckling on the sides like you'd expect from a granite or marble breeding. This one is kind of a little bit more quote-unquote standard looking as far as granite-y kind of stuff goes, but still, unique, got decent white to it. And then these are the boys from the experimental group, and you can see a little bit more of that high contrast white on here. There are a couple that are more, these three over here are more standard, quote-unquote, for what I would expect. So I don't know exactly what that says, or if it says anything at all, but I'm curious to see, working with that, model further, to see if it does play any significant role in the incubation of snakes, because it's fairly documented in geckos, not very well documented in snakes. But check that out. Super, super pretty. Got some nice stuff in here. So I don't know, very interesting, and we'll check in next time to see what happens with the blood pythons. I think that with blood pythons, the difference might be a little bit more noticeable because there's not as much variation in the bloods. It's basically two normal blood pythons bred together, so there shouldn't be as much genetic wibbly wobbly stuff going on compared to Borneos. And then the IJ carpets is where I'm really hoping to see the most difference, but we shall see.